All right, so good morning or good afternoon whenever you're watching this video. This is day 2 of quadratics, okay? So yesterday we went over how to determine if equations, tables, and graph were quadratics, and we went over the basic parts of a quadratic. Today we're gonna actually look at graphs and identify those parts, okay? So if y'all read up here, it says we're gonna use the graph and find the vertex, identify if it has a maximum or minimum, and then find any zeros. We'll also be finding the axis of symmetry, okay? Now, you're gonna see there's a pattern. Once you kind of get on a roll, it becomes a lot easier, okay? So just kind of follow along for right now. So, first thing we wanna find is the vertex for graph A, okay? So if you remember the definition, the vertex is the maximum or minimum part of a quadratic function. So it's like the peak, right? Or the highest or point or the lowest point. So if I look at my graph here, my vertex is down here, right? That's my vertex. It's the lowest point. It's my minimum here. And here, my vertex is 1, 2, 3, 4. So my vertex is 1, comma, negative 4. Okay? Easy, right? Just that point. Now, my axis of symmetry, okay? Remember, that's the invisible line that divides my parabola in half. Okay, now it's very easy to write this answer, to write the axis of symmetry once you have the vertex, okay? Because all it is we write x equals, okay? Then you look at your vertex. Whatever the x value is, that's what the axis of symmetry equals. So x equals, in this case, my x is 1, so x equals 1. That's my axis of symmetry, okay? It's the x value of the vertex. Easiest thing to remember, okay? Now we need to ask ourselves, does my graph have a minimum or a maximum? Okay, so if you remember from yesterday's notes, if my graph has a minimum, it opens up. If it has a maximum, it opens down. So this graph, clearly, right, it opens up, right? Both my arrows go up. So that means I have a minimum. So I'm gonna write min right there, okay? Because it opens up. And then to zeros, okay? So for my zeros, remember, that's where my parabola crosses the x-axis. So here's my x. So my zeros are right here and right there. So I'm going to list those points. So my first one is negative 1, comma 0, right? That's this 0. And my other one is over here at 3, comma 0. Okay? And that's it. Got everything. Got the vertex, axis of symmetry. We know it's a minimum, and we got our zeros. Okay? Not bad. Next, we have letter B, okay? So B, again, we want to find the vertex. So here we look at our peaks, and I can see that my graph, where it curves, it's right here. Right, that's my vertex. And that's at the point, negative 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 4, comma, 0. Okay? Now, remember what I said about on letter A. The axis of symmetry, you start with x equals every time, okay? And then whatever the x value of the vertex is, that's what it equals. So my x value is negative 4, so x equals negative 4, right? And it's this line right here. If you want to draw it, you can go ahead and draw it, right? That's the axis of symmetry. Okay? Now, for min or max, right, I want to see if it opens up or it opens down. This graph opens up. That means I have a minimum. Okay? And then last part, we want to look at the zeros, okay? So remember, the zeros are where my graph crosses the x-axis. Well, here's my x, so if I follow the x-axis, it crosses right there. And that's at the same point as my vertex, so negative 4, comma, 0, okay? So that point is my vertex, and it's a 0, and that's fine, right? We only have one, right? Because that's just where it touches, and it only crosses one time. So that's it. Letter C, okay, so we want to, again, look for our vertex. Where's our peak? And if I see this one, the highest point of this graph, right, where it curves, is this point right there. So my vertex is the point 0, negative 2, okay? Then, again, axis of symmetry, I start with x equals, and then whatever my x value of my vertex is, that's what goes here. So my vertex is, my x value is 0, so I put a 0. Okay? And I can see that's where it cuts my graph in half, right there. Okay? Now, for min or max. So looking at this one, it does look different, right? This graph opens down, which means that this point is a maximum. So it's a max, okay? Now, this is the tricky part right here, okay? So at zeros, we're looking for my graph crosses or touches the x-axis. But if I look, my parabola only goes this high. It never touches or crosses the x-axis, okay? So what we're gonna write for now is no real zeros, okay? Because eventually when you get to like algebra 2 and stuff, we'll talk about imaginary roots, but not yet, okay? So right now, just no real zeros. It does not touch across the x-axis, okay? So that's first side. Flip to the back, okay? So now we're gonna do the same thing, right? We're just gonna be looking at a little bit trickier numbers, okay? So here on the back, we're looking for the vertex first. Now, the vertex you can see is the peak, right? So it's right here, okay? But it does not line up nicely on the lines, okay? So here we're gonna have to actually count. So here I go 1, 2, and then this is 3. So my x value is in between 2 and 3. So I'm gonna call that 2.5, 2.5, okay? And it looks like I have to do the same thing on my y-axis. So I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's in between 4 and 5. So we'll call that 4.5. Okay, so my vertex is 2.5, comma, 4.5, okay? Sometimes you might have to just use the lines to kind of go in between, okay? Now, for axis of symmetry, same thing. We start with x equals whatever the x value of my vertex is, that goes here. So I have 2.5, so my axis of symmetry, 2.5, right? This is still the line that divides my graph in half. Even though it's not lined up on a perfect line, it's still where it divides it, okay? Now, for min or max, this graph, it opens down, right? So that means my vertex is a maximum, okay? And then we find our zeros. They already gave them to us, so we just write them down. So there's 1, there's 2. So this point is 1, comma, 0. This point is 4, comma, 0, okay? Bang, easy. Hardest part was the vertex, okay? Next one. Same type of thing. So we start with our vertex. Again, it's up here, and I can kind of see already it's not going to line up perfectly, okay? So for my x value of my vertex, I go to the right 1. So my x value is 1. Now my y, I go up, and it's between 4 and 5 again. So that means my x is 1, but my y is 4.5 again, okay? And that doesn't really change anything. It's just a little bit weird to write, okay? And the axis of symmetry, again, x equals, what's the x value of my vertex? 1, there you go, okay? Now, for min or max, this graph opens down, right? My arrows are coming down, so that means I have another max, right? That vertex is a maximum point, okay? And then lastly, for our zeros, so I have 1, 0 here, 1, 0 here, okay? So this point is -2, 0. And this point is 1, 2, 3, 4, comma, 0. Okay, moving right along. And then last but not least, we have this graph. So again, our vertex, the peak where it curves. So this point is 0, 1, 2. So my vertex is 0, 2. My axis of symmetry, start with x equals, what's the x value of my vertex? 0, okay? It opens up, so that means it has a minimum. So I write min, okay? And then again, now I look for my zeros. So here's my x-axis. I look at my x-axis, my graph stops up here. It never comes down here, okay? So remember what we wrote on the front. If it never touches or crosses the x-axis, we say no real zeros, okay? That's it. So those are the basic parts of quadratic functions, right? We got the vertex, axis of symmetry, we determined if it was max or min, and we found the zeros, okay? So if you have any questions about these, please feel free to ask your teacher. But other than that, I will see y'all in the next video.